All right, welcome back to Please Read Your Book, or welcome if it's your first time. My name's Carl, and I'm going to talk about books, because I like books, and I read a lot of books. So, today's video, I'm going to do a bit of a book haul. I'm going to talk about a couple things that I just read in the past week, because this is kind of a weekly wrap-up kind of thing. And if I haven't rambled too much, then I'm also going to talk about literacy in America. So let's get started. So I am currently reading The Exorcist. I'm literally right in the middle of it. Started it last night. Started it 2 days ago at work, but I just during lunch break. But I rarely get a lunch break, and I just didn't make much progress with it. But last 2 days I've made good progress with it. I've never read this before. I was kind of inspired to read it because it's Halloween, it's October, you're supposed to read scary, spooky things. Plus, I was just also really curious about it. I've never seen the film in its entirety. Of course, I've seen clips from it, but I've never seen the whole thing. And I am curious to see, after reading it, I am curious to see the film, to see what they did with it. And this is the 50th anniversary edition, but this was printed a few years ago. It came out in 1971 novel, and the film in 1973. And I just realized when I read this morning that the film was directed by William Friedkin, who's one of my favorite directors. Of course, he did The French Connection, but I didn't know he did this. I didn't know he did The Exorcist. And the author, William Peter Beatty, he won an Academy? What did he win? Oh, I just had it. Yeah. Won an Academy for Best Adapted Screenplay. So the author of the novel, also adapted this into the screenplay. And I have to say, reading it, it definitely has a film-like quality to it, meaning that the pacing and the structure, at least so far, of the narrative acts and the scenes, it's definitely like a film, and it's definitely like a film from the late 60s to early to mid 70s with that type of pacing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not, the narrative structure isn't really deep. Yeah, it's definitely a plot-driven novel, and the beats and the plot points are very apparent when you read them. There's not a lot of character depth to it, which I found kind of disappointing, because the opening chapter of it is really cool, really great opening. The prologue is in northern Iraq with a priest who has been, for some reason, he's on an archaeological dig, which is not explained why. And during that dig, he kind of has a encounter with a demon. And that sets the stage for the girl who is possessed. Obviously, is going to be possessed by the same demon, and it's happening in the same area where he's living. He hasn't, where I am right now, he has not gone in yet to see the girl, and he doesn't know yet that she's possessed or maybe possessed. But he's part of the story. So far in the story, the meat of it is just that the girl has become possessed, but the mother has no idea what's going on. She's taking her daughter to see a doctor and now a psychiatrist, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they just can't figure out what's going on. So there's kind of a bit of irony there that, medicine and science can't figure out what's wrong with this girl. But it's very well paced. There is definitely some creepy moments in there, but I feel like maybe it's just because of the time that this was written, but I feel like it could have been handled with a bit more, brevity, or a bit more power to it. It's just kind of suddenly there, and it doesn't seem to impact the characters around them very much, which is very strange considering there's one scene where there's a dinner party and the girl comes out. She's supposed to be in bed sleeping. She comes downstairs and then starts like insulting the guests, and then she pees on the carpet. And then the party carries on. I just can't believe that the party would, like, no one would be shocked or, horrified or asking, like, what is going on? All this kind of stuff. So, but anyway, so I'll definitely polish it off. It's definitely a very fast read. I read probably a good 100 pages, 120 pages of it just this afternoon. So that's what I've been reading. I'll dip into the haul here. Another one that I read just very recently. Hopefully there's not too much glare there. Raymond Carver, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. I've read this multiple times before. I've kind of been dabbling with writing again, and I really wanted to read this because I think Raymond Carver is just a master of the modern short story or the contemporary short story. These stories are just so powerful and so amazing. And I was also led onto this from the last book that I read, that I did a book on, or a video on, The Motel Life by Willie Vlautin. I could tell Vlautin was very heavily influenced by Carver, but not in a good way, not ripping off Carver. So I wanted to read these stories again. And these are if you don't know, there's a bit of controversy that kind of surrounded this particular book and a few other of Carver's books too, in that the versions of these stories that were published were heavily edited by a guy named Gordon Lish, who was an editor and a kind of a literary figure. And I've read both versions of them, and I'm of the camp that the edited versions are better, I think, or have more power to them. So they're definitely very different. The story that really stuck with me in this one is So Much Water, So Close to Home, which is about, it's a recount basically from a wife, soon, or I can't remember if she's divorced him or not, or if she's in the process of divorcing her husband. And the incident that she just finally got fed up with him was when he told her that he went fishing with his friends and they found a dead woman floating in the lake where they were fishing, and they basically just leave the body there and just keep fishing. So that's pretty horrible. And there's just so much symbolism in the story. I mean, with the title, So Much Water, So Close to Home, all the symbolism stuff of water equating death or imminent death, or what happens after we die and that kind of stuff. Really good, really, really powerful. Some really heartbreaking stories in here too. So definitely great. Okay, I'm going to try not to just ramble. And I'm also rocking my table with the camera. So let's go through some recent books that I bought. I'm not going to go into too much depth. Couldn't say no to this one. Alien 3, the unproduced first draft screenplay by William Gibson, who wrote the screenplay for what would have been Alien 3. It obviously did not get produced. And this has now been novelized by Pat Cadigan, who is a science fiction writer, but seems to have more success doing novelizations, I guess, which is kind of strange. I have read some of her science fiction short stories and novels, which I've really liked. So I think it's an interesting duo to have William Gibson and Pat Cadigan on there. And it's a cool, if we can get that in there. Yep, some cool alien stuff there. I'm sure it's not going to be a life-changing read, but I'm sure it will at least be pretty fun to read, and that's okay. Also picked up Runaway from Alice Munro. I know there's a lot of controversy about Alice Munro. I don't know if I'm supposed to read this book now or if I'm supposed to hate Alice Munro. I've got thoughts and opinions about cancel culture and all that kind of stuff, but Alice Munro wrote some amazing short stories, and this is a collection of hers that I have not read and was happy to pick up. So there we go. It's pretty decent size. It's almost 400 pages, so that's a lot of stuff there. All right, next one, James Elroy. This Storm. Kind of bought it on a whim. James Elroy, obviously, just sort of the grandfather or the grandmaster of these modern or postmodern, I guess I would say modern, noir novel, crime novel. I really don't know what this one is about. Of course, it's set in Los Angeles. It's 1942. A body is unearthed in Griffith Park. The cops take it a routine dead man job. They're wrong. It's an early warning signal of chaos. Oh, okay, so we've got Nazis, commies, and race racketeers all wrapped up in Hollywood. So should be some great stuff from James Elroy. I flipped through this and yeah, this has got his sort of like headline style of writing where everything is just these short punchy sentences and it's just bang, 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 bang. Most of the sentences are kind of written like headlines or taglines. So should be a good, fast-paced, sweeping read. All right, the next one, I have to get this right. The Mad and the Bad, Jean-Patrick Manchette. I don't know if I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I was thrilled to find this. I should say right now, all of these books I bought here in Shanghai. All of them I bought online, actually, from booksellers in Shanghai. This is a New York Review of Books edition. I've found tons of New York Review of Books publications here that I'm really, really happy about. This has an introduction from, if we can see that, from James Salas. James Salas is my favorite crime writer. He wrote my favorite crime novel, which is Drive. I absolutely love that novel. He wrote the introduction to this, and I read the introduction to this as an essay on the New York Review of Books website, which compelled me to pick up the book. It's a pretty thin book, which I think the best crime books are not long. They don't need to be long. And beyond that, I don't know too much about this, other than it's supposed to just be absolutely like just bonkers, crazy stuff, like Tarantino level, Pulp Fiction kind of, just like wacky social commentary, but also just like absurd violence and that kind of thing. So should be very, very good. All right, next one, James Salter, Last Night. I read a little bit of this already. This is a collection of short stories from a really great American author who's kind of overlooked now, I think. This is a recent collection of short stories, which surprised me. I didn't know he had published this recently. This is from 2005. And it's just pretty short, 120 pages, just a collection of short stories. I really love his writing. He's great at really like depicting certain moments in people's lives, particularly in relationships. Not necessarily always like husband and wife or couples, but just like relationships. Could also be work relationships or relationships with society, things like that. But he's really good at finding that, it's kind of that defining moment when something changes for better and for worse. So really looking forward to reading that. Next one, another short story collection, Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez. I probably did not pronounce that correctly, and I'm sorry. I don't know much about this other than I loved the title, and it's published by Granta, so I figured it must be good. I think there's some surrealism and maybe magical realism. I really don't know, but I'm really looking forward to finding out about that. Okay. All right, next one. This is, yes, hello, I'm a booktuber. I have a John Williams novel. I almost bungled it there. Butcher's Crossing. Hello, Booktube. Did I say Butcher's Crossing? Yes, hello, Booktube. John Williams. Butcher's Crossing. So I'm being funny because I know hardly anyone is watching at this point. In case you don't know, John Williams wrote Stoner, which everyone in the world has read and raves about. I DNF'd Stoner recently, and I'm going to try to read it again as a buddy read with someone, but I found it to just be not very interesting. Well written, but not interesting. But I've heard that this one is infinitely better and more interesting and wildly overlooked. Kind of a Western novel. It's about a group of hunters, basically traders, chasing buffalo in the Colorado Valley, which is a pretty treacherous place to be, especially in the winter. So this could be quite interesting. So looking forward to that. Next one, I'm not sure if I really am going to read this or not. It's a pretty big novel. All over 500 pages with tiny print. Cloud Atlas, David Mitchell. Obviously, this has been around for quite a while. It was also made into a film, I think, with Tom Hanks, which I did not see. I had kind of ignored this book for ages, and then I saw a video. Someone said it was like one of the best literary science fiction novels they'd ever read. And the way they described it of, sort of interweaved and overlapping stories that created a much larger cohesive narrative actually sounded really cool. And that it also takes place in, somehow it takes place in different times on Earth. And somehow all of those time periods from like prehistoric into like far future and like different intervals somewhere in between there. And somehow all of these converge into one single time. I'm not sure what's happening there, but that actually sounded really cool. So I decided to get it. Next one, I'm probably the last person on BookTube to have not read this. Tender is the Flesh. Augustina Bazterrica? I'm really sorry about that. Seems like everyone's read this. I know what it's all about, but I'm going to read it anyways. Not too long of a novel. I tend to prefer shorter novels, so it's about 200 pages. It's about speculative fiction. If we were to basically raise humans to harvest their flesh, what would that society be like? So there we go. Almost to the end here. I'm not doing too bad. The Memory Police. I have to get this name correct. Yoko Ozawa. Is that correct? Yoko Ozawa. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Speculative fiction, Japanese writer, fairly recent novel. So I was happy to find that here, and Vintage has picked it up. You can find lots of Vintage books, New York Review of Books, and who is the other main publisher? Titan. Penguin, of course, too. Sorry, I was off camera there. Can find a lot of these here in China, and it's great. This won it's right there. This won the 2020 International Booker Prize. I don't know if I've ever read a Booker Prize book before. I'm sure I have, but I never sought it out. So this is speculative fiction. Basically, there are memory police who help people with their memories. And a writer finds out that someone in her family, it doesn't say who, finds out that someone in her family is about to have her memory fixed or whatever it is. So that sounds really interesting, actually, especially in a time like this. I'm not going to say anymore because I live in China and there's certain things happening that we don't talk about now. So, last book I've got here, Silver Nitrate. Oh, geez. Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Got it. For some reason, I got a hardback of this. I don't know why. I accidentally ordered that. This is a Del Rey book, so I guess I can get Del Rey books here too, which is nice. I don't know a lot about this. Is this the one? I don't know anything about this book. Why did I buy this book? Oh, okay. So yeah, this is a horror novel, and there's some links to horror cinema to it. Beyond that, I don't really know. So, but it should be good. So, yeah. So that's my physical book haul. Oh my gosh, my camera. Wow. Okay, I got to rethink how I do these videos. Let's just leave that there. Okay, so that's my physical book haul. I've also been on a tear with my Kindle, and I've also really fallen out of love with my Kindle because it's just, I don't know, I think it's dying or something. It's just really not working very well. And I've also been I bought quite a few graphic novels and manga for my iPad. This is an ancient iPad. If you ever have any doubts about buying Apple products, let me tell you, they last forever. I've had this iPad since almost 10 years now, since 2016. So, and it still works. It's amazing. So, but I'm not going to go into all that stuff. So I'm at 22 minutes right now. I wanted to talk about literacy rates because I had seen a video quite recently by KD Books. I guess I'll try to stick a card or something up there. He talked about literacy rates in Wales, and then he talked a little bit about what he does to help his kids read, and he gave some tips to help people with their own kids to read. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, as a teacher, I'm a teacher here in Shanghai. I teach 4th grade English, and a lot of people always ask me, are you going to go back to America? When are you going to go back to America? When are you going to teach in America? It's a good question, and I don't really have an answer to it, which is not what this video is about. But one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to go back and teach in America is that currently the literacy rates in America are horrible. They're worse than what KD found in Wales. So currently 40% of students in America, 40% of school-aged children are basically illiterate. 40%. That's just horrible. That's absolutely horrifying. So 40%. So that means in a class of 20, you'd have 8 students, and you're highly unlikely to have only a class of 80, especially for English and for reading and things like that. You're more likely to have a class of 30. But in a class of 20, you'd have 8 students who basically couldn't do it, who basically could not read well enough to comprehend and answer basic questions. That is just absolutely horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And I think one of the reasons, there's 2 main reasons of what's happening. The first one is, for a long time, America has used a really flawed teaching method called cueing or 3 cueing. I'm not going to go into a huge detailed description of that because it's pretty, not necessarily complex, but it's something that needs time to break down and discuss. But basically what happens if you're using this method, you're not emphasizing the use of phonics to break down words, and you're not encouraging the child to just keep reading through the word. So if you've got your phonics, you can sound out the word and you can read through it, and then you can either go back later and look in the dictionary to figure out the word or the glossary, or you could have used your context, your textual context clues to understand the word. With the cueing method, they bring in other sources of reference for kids, and we're talking like kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade here. So, which is when phonics must be taught. I can't believe that people just don't use this method. But with the 3 cueing method, they would add pictures to the texts to give clues. And they would also sort of try to call on a larger understanding of the text which again, like for first and second graders, is just the wrong method to be using. I'm not going to go into tons of detail about this. I will link to a great podcast, a great piece of investigative journalism in the form of a podcast called Sold a Story, which really tells this story a whole lot better than I can tell it and do it justice here. But I'll do check that out if you're interested to find out like what's been happening in American schools. And it's a great video. It doesn't politicize the issue at all, which I think is a secondary thing that happens in American schools. I'm not going to get into that. But the other thing that happens, other problem we have, is that people just aren't reading. Generally speaking, people just aren't reading. And kids copy adults. Kids don't see adults. They don't see their parents. They don't see their family members reading. So, of course, they're not going to read. Everything is here. And I understand the irony of making a video to talk about reading. I'm not completely, that irony is not completely not lost on me. But this is one of the reasons why I'm very hesitant to go back and teach in America, because I just feel like it's just like a job that would just be infinitely more challenging. And here's the irony. I teach in China. I teach in a bilingual school in a suburb of Shanghai, and I teach fourth grade English, a little bit of science, but I mainly just teach fourth grade English. And the kids there are, first of all, they're fully fluent. When I teach, obviously I speak English when I teach them. English is the main language of instruction at the school I teach in. And the kids are fully fluent. When I speak to them, I always kind of wonder, like, where did you grow up? Are you from America? Do you have American dad or mom or brother or something? Because they're just fully fluent. And they read so much. They read at such a high level. And we're in China. I've got kids in fourth grade. The average, they'll be reading at the fifth or sixth grade level. That's what most of them read at. I have some kids that can read at seventh or eighth grade level, which is just amazing. And when I say level, I mean like their vocabulary, their understanding of vocabulary, their understanding of texts, not just on a surface level, but on using inference and understanding implicit meaning in texts and things like that. It's just like amazing. Why can't America do this? And this is a huge problem. I had no idea how big of a problem it was. I had no idea it was at 40%. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea it was at 40%. And recently I went home over the summer. It's the first time I've been home for a couple of years. And talking to family members and friends who have kids of their own who are now about the age that I would be teaching, and some of them even older, some of them getting ready to finish high school and supposedly go to college. Oh my gosh, their English level is so bad. It was just like horrifying. And talking to their parents, they're not reading. They're just not reading. And I was just really shocked because my generation, we grew up reading. We were lucky enough to grow up without this. Our lives were not ruined with this until we became adults, and then we ruined our lives with that. But it's really weird that, like, I don't have kids myself, but that people my age would have kids. My generation, we grew up reading. We grew up going to the public library. Somehow, they're not doing that with their own kids. And I just found that, I think that is huge part of the problem. I really liked what Katie did in his video. You really should check it out. And I'm going to make an additional video, hopefully middle of this coming week, that's a bit more serious about it, and I can talk a bit more about things that you can encourage kids, how to get your kids reading more, and maybe some unconventional advice and some of my own practice and all that. I probably should stop rambling about what I'm going to do and just go and do it, right? So anyways, there you go. This has been a book haul video and a bit of a ramble about reading and about literacy rates and all that. So I think I should stop here. My name's Carl. This has been Please Read Your Book, and I want to say thank you if you have made it all the way to the end of this video.